Welcome to Defense Against the Dark Arts. In a moment, I'm going to show you a demonstration of the Imperius Curse and a few other scenes from the fantasy world of Harry Potter. Then, using some video excerpts from real-world experiments, I'm going to make the case that the Imperius Curse is a real thing. The real-world curse, like the fantasy curse, causes regular people, like you and me, to do things we would not otherwise do, as if by magic. This course will focus on how a kind of Imperius Curse is used in organizations like schools every day. Of course, distinguishing the reality from the fantasy is important, but we're going to start with the fantasy. I am your instructor. My name is Don Berg. Now, here is the cinematic demonstration of the Imperius Curse from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
When it comes to the dark arts, I believe in a practical approach. But first, which of you can tell me how many unforgivable curses there are?
3, sir.
And they are so named?
Because they are unforgivable. The use of any one of them will
Earn you a one-way ticket to Azkaban, correct? So, which curse shall we see first? Weasley!
Yes.
Stand! Give us a curse.
Well, my dad did tell me about one. The Imperius Curse.
Oh, yeah, your father would know all about that. Gave the ministry quite a bit of grief a few years ago. Perhaps this will show you why.
Hello.
Ugly little beauty. Ambrosio. Imperio! Don't worry, it's completely harmless. If she bites, she's lethal. What are you laughing at? Get off! Talented, isn't she? What should I ever do next? Jump out the window? Drown herself? Scores of witches and wizards have claimed that they only did you-know-who's bidding under the influence of the Imperius Curse. But here's the rub. How do we sort out the liars?
As I said before, the real-world manifestation of the Imperius Curse causes people like you and me to do things as if by magic. But it is actually done through the psychology of hidden curricula. A hidden curriculum is where brains interact with policies to create the limitations on what can happen in any organizational setting, like a classroom. Now, one of the key differences between the fantasy and the reality is that unlike the wizarding world, we cannot simply declare the Imperius Curse unforgivable and throw everyone who casts it into the soul-sucking clutches of the Dementors at Azkaban prison. You may be wondering why we can't. The reason is because the policy makers in every organization are casting the spell. It is inherent to the nature of organizations. Casting the spell is part of what makes an organization and not a random crowd or a mob. Not casting that kind of spell in an organization would be like trying to have a meal without food or drink. If you take away all the food and drink, then whatever you're doing cannot be properly called a meal. The real challenge in organizations is telling the difference between the good and the bad spells, and then getting the good to replace the bad. I'm going to teach you how to cast both the good and the evil spells so that you can do good when you have the opportunity and counter the evil where you find it. We will come back to this at the end of the course, but for now, I trust that you want the organizations you care about to be good ones. And by good, I mean morally upstanding, not merely successful. I assume you will faithfully play out your role in the organization in a way that will create more well-being for others, not just for yourself. we need one more dose of fantasy before we tackle reality. In the following scenes from Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, you will see techniques for both classroom and behavioral management, but more important for this course, see if you can spot the influence of the policy makers at the Ministry of Magic. As long as you have not been hiding under a rock for the last 20 years, then the reform agenda of the ministry should sound familiar, and you will recognize how significant the impact of government reform agendas can be in real-world schools.
Good morning, children. Ordinary wizarding level examinations. OWLs, more commonly known as owls. Study hard and you will be rewarded. Fail to do so and the consequences may be severe. Your previous instruction in this subject has been disturbingly uneven, but you'll be pleased to know from now on you will be following a carefully structured, ministry-approved course of defensive magic. Yes.
There's nothing in here about using defensive spells.
Using spells? Well, I can't imagine why you would need to use spells in my classroom.
We're not going to use magic.
You will be learning about defensive spells in a secure, risk-free way.
Well, what use is that? If we're going to be attacked, it won't be risk-free.
Students will raise their hands when they speak in my class. It is the view of the ministry that a theoretical knowledge will be sufficient to get you through your examinations, which, after all, is what school is all about.
And how's theory supposed to prepare us for what's out there?
There is nothing out there, dear. You're going to be doing some lines for me today, Mr. Potter. No, not with your quill. I'm going to be using a rather special one of mine. Now, I want you to write, I must not tell lies. Yes?
Nothing.
That's right. Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished.
I am merely requesting that when it comes to my students, you conform to the prescribed disciplinary practices.
So silly of me, but it sounds as if you're questioning my authority in my own classroom. Minerva.
Not at all, Dolores. Merely your medieval methods.
I am sorry, dear. But to question my practices is to question the ministry, and by extension, the minister himself. I am a tolerant woman, but the one thing I will not stand for is disloyalty.
Disloyalty.
Things at Hogwarts are far worse than I feared. Cornelius will want to take immediate action.
Having already revolutionized the teaching of defense against the dark arts, Dolores Umbridge will, as High Inquisitor, have powers to address the seriously falling standards at Hogwarts School.
Interesting note. On Harry Potter fan sites, you can find the claim that Dolores Umbridge is actually more hated than Voldemort. One site had a poll, and at the time I found it, 90% of the fans there hated Umbridge more than Voldemort. You see, she was not directly allied with the Dark Lord, even though she held key positions in the Ministry while Voldemort was in power. Umbridge was not a Death Eater, but she was an ambitious and crafty organizational manipulator. She wielded both magical and organizational power without fear. She shaped policy to serve her own agenda and ignored official policies when it suited her goals. Her manipulation of policy demonstrated that her philosophy is similar to the no good or evil, only power of Voldemort, and while she clearly does not have the magical prowess of Voldemort, she was at least his equal in using the organizational magic of policy in pursuit of power. That is how she became headmistress at Hogwarts, when she finally drove Dumbledore from that position by accusing him of treason against the Ministry. To paraphrase one of the fans trying to explain the deep hatred of Umbridge, not many readers or moviegoers have had their family members killed by an unrepentant, maniacal embodiment of evil like Voldemort. But lots of us have had a teacher, professor, or coworker, or boss who was at least a little bit of an Umbridge. Even though Dolores Umbridge was never shown to cast the Imperious Curse directly in the books or the movies, she is the most important character for us to consider because of those real-life Umbridges. What if we knew how to deal with the kind of evil that produces cruel outcomes through the passage of well-intended policies? What if we could prevent Umbridges from holding power? We can. The trick is to know that real-world Umbridges are made. They cannot exist unless there is an organization that supports their behavior. You will see an example of this in the third lesson. Our challenge in this course is to understand how such people can be created by organizations. I'm going to take 5 episodes to make sure that we're clear about the real-world side of the hidden curriculum. Then in the final 2 episodes, we will cover the practical principles for managing hidden curricula and making it more difficult for cruelty to become normal in organizations. If we organize the situation properly, in the real world, we can ultimately prevent a potential Umbridge from doing evil deeds. In the next episode, I'm going to show you some non-fictional, real-world examples of the magic of situations.